In 2020, the USA Marine Corps did something no military branch had ever done voluntarily. It gave up its tanks. Every single M1 Abrams the Corps owned was marked for divestment, and by 2021, the last Marine tank battalion had cased its colors and deactivated. Critics called it a gamble. Retired generals called it a mistake. Because for the first time in generations, Marines storming a hostile beach would have no heavy armor behind them, and the most firepower their amphibious vehicles carried was a .50 caliber machine gun. For 5 years, that gap sat wide open. Then, in May 2026, the Corps fielded its answer. An 8-wheeled, 35-ton armored vehicle that swims ashore from 12 nautical miles out at sea, drives inland at 65 miles per hour, and carries an unmanned turret armed with a 30mm automatic cannon. It is called the ACV-30, and what is inside this machine explains exactly how the Marine Corps plans to fight its next war. To understand why this vehicle exists, start with the one it replaces. The AAV-7, the Assault Amphibious vehicle, entered service in 1972. It was a Vietnam-era design, a boxy aluminum-tracked vehicle with a flat hull, built to churn through the surf and deliver a squad of Marines onto a defended beach. For half a century, it did exactly that. It rolled ashore in Grenada in 1983. It crossed the desert in Operation Desert Storm. It carried Marines into Iraq in 2003, fighting hundreds of miles inland from the sea. Generations of Marines learned to live with its quirks, the deafening noise, the diesel fumes, the way water sloshed across the deck plates during a launch. The vehicle was older than most of the men riding inside it, and everyone knew it. What almost nobody predicted was how the AAV's story would end. July 30th, 2020. A training exercise off San Clemente Island, California. An AAV loaded with Marines leaves the beach and heads back toward its ship across open water. Somewhere in that transit, the vehicle begins taking on water. The bilge pumps cannot keep up. The vehicle slows, wallows, and then sinks. 8 Marines and 1 Navy corpsman die. The investigation that follows is brutal. It finds a vehicle in poor material condition, inadequate training for water emergencies, and safety procedures that failed at nearly every level. The Marine Corps relieves commanders, grounds the fleet from water operations, and confronts an uncomfortable truth. It has been asking a 50-year-old vehicle to do a job it can no longer safely do. By the end of 2021, the decision is final. The AAV will never conduct amphibious operations again, except in an emergency. The vehicle that defined Marine landings for 5 decades is finished as a ship-to-shore platform, and the Corps needs its replacement faster than ever. That replacement was already in motion. BAE Systems, partnered with the Italian firm Iveco Defense Vehicles, had adapted a proven 8-wheeled design into what became the Amphibious combat vehicle. The program passed its critical production milestone in June 2018, and the first version, the ACVP personnel carrier, entered service in 2020, almost exactly as the AAV's fate was being sealed. A command and control variant followed, packed with workstations and radios. A recovery variant with a crane and winches is in testing now. But every one of those vehicles carried nothing heavier than a remotely operated machine gun. The firepower gap the tanks left behind was still wide open. So in 2022, the Marine Corps ordered production representative test vehicles of a third variant, one built around a cannon. The first test vehicle arrived in February 2024 and went straight into evaluation, live fire, water operations, systems integration, which raises the question the Marine Corps spent 6 years answering. How do you give Marines cannon-armed protection without buying anything that looks like a tank? The answer starts with the hull. The ACV-30 rides on a blast-resistant V-shaped underbody, a design lesson written in blood on the roadsides of Iraq and Afghanistan, where the AAV's flat bottom caught the full force of a buried bomb. The ACV's angled hull deflects the blast outward and away. Inside, every seat is individually blast mounted, isolating each Marine from the shockwave of an explosion beneath the wheels. A 690 horsepower engine drives all 8 wheels through an advanced H-drive system, which keeps power flowing to the remaining wheels even if one is shot away or destroyed by a mine. On paved roads, the vehicle reaches 65 miles per hour, fast enough to keep pace with any convoy in the American inventory. In the water, twin propellers push it through open ocean, and this is the number that matters most. The ACV-30 can swim to shore unaided from up to 12 nautical miles off the coast. That distance keeps the amphibious ships that launch it beyond the horizon, outside the range of the shore-based missiles and drones that make close-in landings so dangerous today. Once ashore, it keeps driving for more than 250 miles inland, hauling a payload of over 3 tons. 3 crew members operate the vehicle, with room for roughly 8 combat-loaded Marines in the back. Unlike the AAV it replaces, this vehicle was built from the first weld to survive both the open sea and the modern battlefield. But the reason this variant exists sits on the roof, and it is unlike any turret the Marine Corps has ever fielded. It is the Kongsberg MCT-30. A medium-caliber remote turret built in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And here's the remarkable part. No one sits inside it. The turret is completely unmanned. The gunner operates it from a protected station deep inside the hull, seeing the battlefield through day cameras, thermal imagers, and a laser rangefinder mounted on the turret itself, with a panoramic sight on the roof scanning independently for the next target. Why would you put a cannon on a vehicle and let no one sit behind it? Because everything about that choice buys survivability. In a traditional turret, the gunner's body occupies the most exposed position on the vehicle. In the ACV-30, the turret takes the exposure while the entire crew stays behind the armor. And because the turret does not extend down into the hull the way a manned turret must, it steals no interior space from the Marines riding in the back. The weapon lives outside. The people live inside. If the gun needs new ammunition or maintenance, the crew can reach it from within the vehicle. But in combat, nobody has to leave the protection of the hull. The gun itself is a 30mm Mk-44 Bushmaster 2 automatic cannon, paired with a 7.62mm coaxial machine gun. The turret's dual linkless ammunition feeds hold roughly 150 rounds ready to fire, and because there are 2 independent feeds, the gunner can switch between ammunition types. Instantly, armor-piercing rounds for a light armored vehicle 1 second, high explosive rounds for a machine gun bunker the next, with no reloading pause in between. The entire system is fully stabilized. A fire control computer automatically calculates the ballistic solution, compensating for lead angle, cant, tilt, and the motion of the vehicle itself, which means the ACV-30 can put accurate cannon fire on target while moving over rough ground. For Marines who spent the last 5 years relying on machine guns and waiting for air support or artillery whenever they met anything armored, this is a different category of capability entirely. If a vehicle that swims like a boat, drives like an armored truck, and shoots like an infantry fighting vehicle changes how you picture a Marine landing, hit that subscribe button, because the story of how many of these the Corps is buying reveals where American war planning is actually headed. Follow the money, and the picture sharpens. After the test vehicles proved the concept, the Marine Corps awarded BAE Systems a full-rate production contract in April 2025 worth $188.5 million for 30 vehicles, plus spares, fielding support, and test equipment. That works out to just over $6 million per vehicle before the turret is installed. The turrets come through a separate contract with Kongsberg worth up to $329 million for 175 systems, enough to arm every planned vehicle with room to spare. Then, in February 2026, the Corps came back for more, another $195 million for 30 additional vehicles, pushing total ACV 30 orders past 150 units. Hulls take shape in York, Pennsylvania. Turrets are built in Johnstown. Final integration happens in Charleston, South Carolina. 3 months later, in May 2026, the first vehicles began arriving in operational Marine units. This is not an experiment anymore. It is a production line feeding a fleet. And that fleet has a very specific purpose. The ACV-30 is a centerpiece of Force Design 2030, the sweeping reorganization that traded the Marine Corps' tanks, most of its cannon artillery, and thousands of billets for a lighter, faster force built around one scenario above all others: a fight across the islands and coastlines of the Western Pacific. In that vision, Marines do not mass on a single beach behind a wall of armor the way they did at Iwo Jima or Incheon. Modern reconnaissance satellites and precision missiles would turn that kind of concentration into a target. Instead, small Marine units spread across contested shorelines, landing at multiple points, moving from island to island, and forcing an adversary to hunt dozens of dispersed teams instead of one big formation. Every piece of that concept depends on vehicles that can cross water without a port, without a dock, without a secured beach. A 70-ton Abrams cannot swim between those islands. It needs landing craft, ramps, and time. A 35-ton vehicle that launches from a ship over the horizon, crosses 12 miles of open water under its own power, and comes ashore already fighting, that is the tool the concept was waiting for. So when critics asked what the Marines actually got in exchange for their tanks, this vehicle is a large part of the answer. The first ACV-30 vehicles are in Marines' hands now, and the timing is hard to ignore. The Corps retired its last tank in 2021 on a bet that the next fight would happen in the surf zone, not the open desert. 5 years later, the vehicle built for that bet is finally rolling into the fleet. It does not have the armor of an Abrams, and it was never meant to. It will not win a duel with a main battle tank, and its designers would tell you that was never the mission. What it has is something no tank ever offered: the ability to leave a ship beyond the horizon, cross miles of ocean, climb onto a hostile shore, and immediately deliver accurate, stabilized cannon fire with every Marine inside still protected behind armor. The AAV-7 carried Marines to the beach for 50 years and paid a terrible price at the end of its life. The ACV-30 was built to carry them past the beach, and for the first time since the tanks went away, they will not arrive outgunned.